Every Premier League club's one to watch in 2026. This is going to be interesting because a lot of these shouts are not the players that you might think. Some are rogues, some are players you won't be aware of, and some are players that have probably had their stock drop in 2025 but are going to be on the old remontada in 2026. So Doogie Critchley joins me to go through it. We've done a podcast going through every Premier League club's underrated player. Lovely chat. You will love that. Go and check it out as soon as this is over. But let's get straight into it, Doogie. There's a link to Doogie's YouTube channel in the description, and you will be kicking us off. We'll be going in league table order at the time of recording, and Arsenal have done it again. They're at top. And I was amazed by this. I didn't expect it, but I like it.
Yeah, so I've gone a little bit quirky with some of mine, and this is one of my quirkier ones. So players to watch, you're probably thinking, oh, is it going to be Yorkeres when he feels much more comfortable, or Eze's just scored a hat-trick, or Darman's going to explode. I actually went with Martin Odegaard on more of a sort of pressure point of view, because 2026 feels like a massive year for him. He's turning 27 in December. He's had to watch mainly from the sidelines as Arsenal have had this great run of form. As we record this, 6 points clear. They've started the Champions League, although they do play Bayern this week with 4 wins out of 4. He's missed 12 games this season with injury. He missed 15 the year before. He got injured, about halfway through that first half against West Ham. Prior to that, he'd had an amazing game against Olympiacos, and Arsenal fans were saying, oh, he's kind of back. He's looking like his best again.
Came on against Newcastle, and he made a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like, in his absence, he's had to watch Eberechi Eze, who hasn't necessarily ripped up any trees in terms of numbers, I mean, aside from just a hat-trick in the North London derby, but he'd only scored previously against Crystal Palace, and he scored for England against Serbia. Eze's having a very good season, don't get me wrong, but hadn't necessarily exploded in terms of numbers. Whereas now there is just this narrative where Eze is, I think, 6 months older than Odegaard. Odegaard, I don't think Arsenal would want to sell him by any means, but it's a World Cup year for him. Arteta's taken some quite ruthless decisions in the past. You know, Zinchenko, when he arrived, was absolutely massive part of that side. So was Gabriel Jesus, and mainly that's due to injury, but he's now going to be, fourth choice centre forward when he gets back from injury?
I like this shout because I think it takes a village, right? You need a squad to kind of get through it all. But every team that kind of wins the league does well. You sort of starts to crystallise what that team is and who plays, right? And I think what we're seeing is obviously Marino can come out and you can put a striker in there, but you're not taking Eze out. I wouldn't. And I think that double pivot of, you're seeing the best Rice I think we've seen. Zubimendi is so much more of a sort of box-to-box player than we thought. I thought he'd just sit there and play, but he's given that license as well. So where are you going to put Odegaard in this team? That's my issue. It's like when you get to sort of March, I think he'll obviously have to play, but is he the B? Is he the B side now? Because you can't. Where can you put him?
Well, also, you've got Ethan Nwaneri coming through. You've got Max Darman, who's not going to replace Saka, so he might get some minutes centrally. You've got Lewis Skelly, who's no longer playing as a left-back, so he needs minutes in midfield. It just feels like Odegaard, through kind of no fault of his own, mainly due to injury and maybe a slight drop in his numbers, now doesn't feel like a sort of firm fixture in this Arsenal side. And I can imagine a scenario, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, I can't look into the future, but unless things turn around for him, I don't know whether he'd necessarily be sold in 2026, but I could imagine him being sold in 2027 when he'll be turning 29 shortly. So I just think it's going to come to a sort of a tipping point. It's one to watch. It's one to watch.
I think it's a great shout to kick us off, because it's not about January, February. It's about, in a year's time, like, what is the progression of this for him? Like, I like him. I actually quite like him in a dominant team's double pivot, in the sense of, like Declan Rice is able to go, or he can come and help. Like, I think Odegaard is better with the game in front of him, really, than going and standing in those uncomfortable positions, of which Eze is utterly comfortable. And I did a whole video on that. It was like, you need Eze. You need Eze, because that having those players that can blow up the game, we'll talk about others in this list, like, I think that's a huge part of football right now. I think it always has been, but I think more so than ever. And Odegaard that's where the criticism of him has come, as he's not been totally comfortable in those areas. And I think he's a little bit better at that touch deeper. So he probably needs to find a team that fits that. And look, you don't want to get rid of him because he's obviously a great player, but it's awkward. It is awkward. Miles Lewis-Skelly as well. Like, how's that going to, where, because he's not really getting that left back spot anymore, as good as he is. Like, would he want to sort of step into midfield? Like, would you want to kind of commit to him, or is it because it's Arsenal and you're one of the top teams in the league? Do you just go be ruthless and go best players survive? It takes a squad. It's just, is he happy with that?
It's dog eat dog out there.
It is. Chelsea. This is me. Esteval William. I think the thing with him is obviously we're in a World Cup year, and Brazil are sort of starting to play differently so that they can get him in the team. And I think the thing with it, some people kind of maybe got a touch annoyed with me over the Club World Cup performances with him. And I was never worried about his talent, but it's, as a young lad, the pressure of that tournament, it felt really, really big for him there. And I think you saw that in his flow. Like he was sort of trying a little bit too much, trying a little bit too hard, had the team on his back, and he struggled. He did struggle in those performances. And so coming into Chelsea, it was going to be interesting to see when he shone, and if that was going to take a season of acclimatization, or if he was going to be able to hit the ground running. I think because Chelsea are such a good team, and they give their wide players those reps of getting on the ball and being able to do stuff, I think he's looked and felt quite at home. And I think he's been brilliant. And I think his talent has utterly shone. Scored some big goals as well. And I think, this Chelsea team, I think, is really starting to go places, in my opinion. And I think Cole Palmer not being a part of the games recently is actually, a year ago, that would have been devastating for them. I think now, you've got a lot of guys with 23, 24. Esteval's not that. But I think he's got that kind of presence of a Neymar, a Yamal. And I think it doesn't take much for him to believe in himself. And I think we've seen that pretty quickly. And that's often the case when a player comes in, especially to new continent, that first year can be difficult unless it goes well quickly. And he might have some kind of drop off at some point. But I think in a World Cup year, being a Brazilian player and, so young and so exciting, and he's so kind of direct and fluent, I think you can't keep your eyes off him as much as anything else.
Yeah, he's been absolutely magical, I think. And he's been well managed as well by Maresca, because it'd be very easy to be like, this guy has to play every minute of every game. We need him. Cole Palmer's out, etc. But I don't think he's overworked him just yet. And I think some Chelsea fans have maybe been frustrated with that, but I think it's probably the sensible thing to do. And I think they're benefiting from some big players now being at least 2 years into their roles there. Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Cucurella, Reece James is back to his best. And I think you add a Colwill at the back who was starting to really become, really, really one of those top Premier League centre-backs. And I think it makes
same as the rest of those
difference.
guys. There were moments where you're like, come on, you're better than this. But now you're starting to see that kind of consistency. Also, they're stacked out wide. Mm-hmm. So you can bring him in and take him out. And I think that's so great for him, that it's an opportunity to kind of enjoy games of football as opposed to, this is on you, but you need to fix this, which is what I feel like we saw in the Club World Cup, which he's not having to do here. So I think he's definitely one to watch. Man City on a different vibe to Odegaard. I went with pure excitement to watch this guy get a run of games, and it's Ryan Cherki. I think he's only been able to play 10 games for Man City so far. He's missed 9 games with a thigh injury. I think actually when he has played, he's generally been really impressive. 3 goals and 3 assists so far. He's had some outstanding games. I think he was great against Swansea in the Carabao Cup, and yes, it's Swansea in the Carabao Cup. That has to be taken into account, but also Dortmund in the Champions League. I thought he was brilliant as that as well. Came off the bench in that game, was absolutely massive. And his underlying numbers are really, really impressive already. He's at 0.67 expected assists per 90. And look, that's a small sample size. That won't stay across the entire season. But in his final year at Lyon, he was at nearly 0.5. So an expected assist every 2 games, effectively, or an assist every 2 games on that metric if he carries on with that level. And that would be the best record in Europe if he played a few more minutes as well, because you have to have played 500 minutes, I think, to get considered in the overall league tallies as well. So creativity like you wouldn't believe. 10 passes into the box already, which is only 4 fewer than Foden, but he's played 300 fewer minutes. And he just makes things happen. And I don't think he's even got to his best just yet as well. He's only completed 2 of his 14 dribbles. And whilst we've seen other 10s this year, either through injury or loss of form
whether that's Palmer or Maddison being out and Florian Wirtz, of course, and Xavi Simons kind of struggling. I actually think Ryan Cherki, whenever he has played, has looked instantly like one of City's best players and one of their most entertaining, and the one that seems to even have the most innate understanding of how to unlock Erling Haaland as well by playing those early balls over the top. And it does look like that partnership is going to be really, really crucial. And whereas I see Phil Foden potentially developing into a slightly deeper player, which he's used this year, and for England, it feels like Tuchel wants to use him almost as a sort of backup 9 to Harry Kane, which, given the lack of options outside of Kane, doesn't necessarily feel like the worst shout. It feels like Ryan Cherki is going to be a nailed-on starting piece of this puzzle when his body just allows him to be.
Most passes into the penalty area first in the Premier League, which is not the most outrageous stat. 2.5 key passes per 90, 7th in the Premier League for that one as well. But like you say, not got the minutes just yet. But I think the bit of a theme maybe of this list and kind of how I'm feeling about it at the moment with football is those players that I don't know what you're going to do when you got it. They're really important right now.
Definitely.
Really, really important. And so, Esteval to a point, but Cherki and even as a great example is Doku. Doku out wide, I know what he's going to do. He's trying to go at you, might go outside, but he's not in a more central zone where I don't really know if he's going to go left or going to go right. When he is in there, I don't know. You don't know what he's going to do. And Cherki has that sparkle about him. So yeah, great shout. He is generally one to watch, isn't he? Right, this is a bit of a gear change. I want to have a conversation, please, with Aston Villa fans, because you know more than me, but I have had a recent experience with a player that came in and I got it wrong. This QPR player called Nicholas Madsen, who's been absolutely fantastic for us this year. Last year, really, really struggled. Every QPR fan has seen that and has kind of accepted they were wrong, right? Evan Gesson, I'm going to go with, because Aston Villa fans, he's come in for a solid amount of money, had a good record in Ligue 1, and he's struggling, like really, really struggling. But Aston Villa, as much as they're winning games, in terms of scoring goals, they're not right.
Right.
Basically
just long ranges at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, Ollie Watkins isn't right either, but he's obviously got so much more credit in the bank. You're kind of waiting for him because that's what you know. And what I would sort of challenge people, because I've seen like a lot of stuff where like, I see a headline was saying like, you've wasted all this money on this lad. I think the point I wanted to make about him was that he's obviously struggling. He's obviously coming to a new place, all those things. How many times do we see players in their second season do much better? The opposite of Esteval. I think the point I want to make is that he can't be this bad. Like, he must be acclimatizing. And I think it feels like when you're giving the ball away the amount that he is, when we've seen the talent that he has, it feels like that's a confidence issue. That's a human issue, and not a player that's just, washed.
Yeah, well, absolutely. When I did watch him over the last couple of years at Nice, it would often be like well-timed through balls. He's running onto it and then finish, and like really calm finishes. He played on both sides. He could play a little bit down the middle as well. But I'm not really seeing Ollie Watkins get that many one-on-ones at the moment either. It feels like the connections in attacking areas just really aren't there this season. And whether that's opposition managers slightly not working Villa out, but sitting so much deeper against them, not kind of getting involved with their attempts to bait the press and then play quite vertically.
And it feels weird, doesn't it? Because like I say, like Villa are fourth.
Yeah.
Villa are fourth, but like...
I think most Villa fans would say...
I think they would.
They haven't played that well.
I agree with you. I think, look, expected goal difference. The top teams are all in the plus. Like, they're on minus 0.46. Like, that from an attacking point of view, they're not where they really, really want to be. And I think it's a funny situation with Villa in the striker positions because, Marlon is... I can never really figure out Marlon. I think, look, he's a good player to have there, for sure, but he's a forward, not a striker. Gesson maybe similar, but maybe a bit more of a striker. But obviously right now, it's not working for him. But my point would be just to kind of wait and watch with him, because I think to give up on someone 3 months into a season is understandable, and I've done it myself. But yeah, give him a chance. I
also wonder whether Tielemans, having missed so many games this season, Rodgers, everyone is picking up the ball that bit deeper. There's more players on them. It's just harder to get the fluid, all the kind of space in the final third. It does feel like everyone's it's all a bit cramped.
Yeah.
Which makes me suggest that they've been slower to attack, but I need to look into it.
Because, is Watkins rubbish now?
No.
Even though he's been great for years? I think it's just... that's how I'm intrigued. So, Villa fans, talk to me. I'm going to be checking the comments. We'll know your thought on it. You know him. You know the situation better than me. Crystal Palace.
I went with Jeremy Pino, who I think it's been really fun to watch, particularly in some of the games in Europe as well. And I've been impressed by him. I don't think it's easy to sign that late in a window for a club playing a pretty different system. He was generally used out wide on either flank in a 4-4-2 at Villarreal. Now you're kind of playing as an inverted 10 in a 3-4-3 with, and we talked about it in the last podcast, a very solid Premier League player in Tyreek Mitchell, but not necessarily the most dynamic on the overlap or the most creative on the overlap as well. So for Jeremy Pino, and I don't think he's necessarily had the goals or assists in the Premier League just yet. I think it's only one goal so far. But he's looked really, really fun to watch.
He's a little bit further away from goal, though, isn't he? So it'll be one where he's sort of the pass before the pass, I think, a lot of the time.
Definitely. And this is a guy who was seriously highly rated in Spanish football circles prior to injury at Villarreal. Like, was when he was sort of 18, considered one of the next big things in Spain. And obviously, Yamal's emerged and Nico Williams have emerged, and he's kind of been pushed down the pecking order. And Oyarzábal's a very useful player at international level as well. But I think his underlying numbers, very, very solid. His 0.53 expected goals and assists, that puts him between Mo Salah, who's not having a good season, and Brian Mbeumo, well, by his standards, and Brian Mbeumo, who's getting a lot of praise, deservedly so. And I think if it wasn't for Mateta having a little bit of an off-season so far in terms of his finishing, his numbers could be even better. I think Jeremy Pino would be getting even more credit. I think he's been very good. Yeah,
it could be interesting to see how that kind of continues with him, because, yeah, it does feel like he's got a bit of start. He's clever, isn't he? Really, really clever. But I wonder, like, in a different team that plays a different way, would it, he's not the biggest. Would that, like, make any kind of difference for him, or would he be fine? I mean, really intrigued to see where his ceiling kind of goes. But yeah, I think he's plugged into that really, really well. And
looks like
Palace are flying.
He looks like he's looking for the runners around him as well. Whereas
he feels very generous.
Yeah, he does. Feels like a real team player. Whereas I like Jose, and he finished the season amazingly well last year, but there was a stat last year where he was taking a far greater, almost the worst shot-to-goal ratio in the Premier League. So many shots, very few goals up until about February time. Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, he's sort of, it's more about, he seems a more generous lover. Yes. Brighton. Stefanos Simas. Wanted to put him forward just because of, the churn of Brighton changes. And also up top, they've not got an outrageous amount of strikers. And I also feel like, Welbeck can't go on forever. Or can he? Yeah, and he can. But you got Rutter there as well. Rutter feels like someone will, one of those big, I can imagine being the next Pedro. So someone kind of going and grabbing him, because he is fun. I do like him. Although he is... doesn't want to be a 9. No. And he can be he gets on the ball in great areas. He can then be really disappointing with his final pass from what I've seen. But Simas... I saw the brace against Oxford, I think it was. I think it was on his debut. And I like his frame. I like that he's facing goal a lot more than some of the players that Brighton have. I also trust Brighton. And I think they have not got a lot of strikers. So because of that, whereas they've got like loads of midfielders, loads of attacking midfielders, I think there's an opportunity there for him. You've got I can never say his name. Kustelas, yeah, who went for kind of bigger money, but Simas is getting a few more minutes at the moment. I just think I trust Brighton. So I imagine at some point he'll be really good. They're always 12 months ahead, aren't they? Yeah. Always 12 months ahead. I agree. There's the scouting they feel like they do their scouting furthest away from we want them right now, Brighton. Yeah. And I think that generally their record in that has been very, very impressive. Next up was Sunderland in the heady heights of, 7th now? Still absolutely loving life. I think a lot of Sunderland players have got so much credit. I kind of looked at someone that I think can go to a different level of what we've seen so far. And it's mainly due to he picked up a head injury and then was ruled out for quite a few games because of a concussion. But Omar Alderete, I think when he has played, has been really, really impressive. And almost from that first appearance of the season where he came off the bench, I don't remember who he came on for, but anyway, he came off the bench against West Ham, created our first goal, I think, for Dan Ballard. I think it was that one rather than Mayenda. Either way, one of those, he was absolutely amazing from the get-go. and quite crucial for Sunderland, where I think Mukiele is a decent passer. I don't think he's exceptional. I think Geertruida is a decent passer, but might not play every game. Alderete feels like he's got a really nice mix of physicality, aerial duel success rate, etc., and also can play these balls and also drive with the ball a lot more effectively. He's very different from what I thought he was going to be, because he signed from Getafe, who plays some of the most limited football in the entirety of Europe under Bordalas. But actually, this guy feels like he can do everything, and I want him to kind of fulfill his potential. And at 28, the kind of time is now.
Right.
God, I've attacked my night now as well.
Been haunted.
Yeah.
One question I want to ask you about Sunderland. And Sunderland fans are going, why are you asking that? But I have to. What happens if Xhaka gets injured? What do you do? How would you play?
It's a good question, because at the moment, we're using these basically one shuttler at the moment in Siddiqui, but I think ideally it would be Diarra in there as well. Energy, legs around Xhaka. It's a horrible situation to think about. Luckily, Granit Xhaka is kind of made of granite. He doesn't seem to get injured that often, but of course it could well happen. You'd expect probably Dan Neil to come in. Dan Neil can play quite a simple game when I think he's asked to as well. I think he's struggled when he's trying to do a little bit of everything over the last few years. So I think he would probably come in and try and play the game very simply. But yeah, our creativity, our balls into the final third, our leadership, it takes a monumental hit. Yeah,
because I was just thinking, is Xhaka is he the most important player in the Prem?
Probably. But then
up there.
I think most people, well, I certainly don't expect us to finish in the top 10. So you could probably make a case for, well, to be fair, someone like Saka's importance at Arsenal feels less than it ever has.
Yeah.
Maybe Declan Rice at Arsenal. But again, I think there's other replacements in there that could do a job, not as good as him. But yeah, maybe Caicedo at Chelsea feels pretty relied on. But yeah, Xhaka would be right in the discussion for most important players.
I think so. Bournemouth. I'm going to go for Milosavljevic. Come on, I said it.
He's been great when he's played.
Yeah, and he's not played a huge amount. And I think it's just, again, it's one where if you want to get there early, you want to keep an eye on a player. I think what they've done well with when they have played him is they've kind of gone to Senesi, like more in terms of their build-up. But they have still utilised him, and they've still been able to put him in there, and he's still done pretty well. When he's had to step in with Diakite getting injured at times. And I just think he's so young. For him to be getting Premier League minutes as a centre-back, I think is pretty impressive to me. So again, it's kind of similar to the Brighton aspect of it. And it's amazing, again, for them to make all those changes and for these players to be able to sort of step in. It does highlight how fantastic the manager is. It does keep coming back to that. But yeah, as an 18-year-old, to be good enough to step in, I think it's a matter of time, and it might be one where it'd be interesting to see. It might be the second half of 2026 where, do they sell another one and then now it's your turn, and that's what these mid-table Premier League teams are. That's allowing them to kind of punch above their weight, but they get it right, and that's easier said than done. But I think he's been good so far. So only 275 minutes. There's only so much you can kind of say about him, to be honest. But I think they're starting to get a bit of a pedigree, Bournemouth, in those positions. So why would I doubt him?
I like it. My next couple are more sort of transfer related, and Spurs fans aren't going to like this, but Mickey van der Ven.
Would he?
I think he would. I think he would.
Wow.
Mickey van der Ven, what an interesting time it's been at Spurs. He's obviously missed a huge amount of games as well. I think it's 48 games missed. All but eight, I should say, have been with hamstring issues. But this year, he's had no injury issues. And you've seen, particularly in the early part of this season, the kind of benefits of some of Frank's coaching in terms of being more of a threat from set pieces, etc., which was definitely something he wanted to introduce. I think when he has been fit, he looks like a player that could play consistently for a Champions League club. Spurs were very decent in his first season. I think they finished 5th. Last year, obviously 17th, wins the Europa League. This year, it's difficult to imagine Spurs on current form finishing the top 10 for me personally.
I think he's top scorer, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's really disappointing for a player of Van der Ven's calibre who could go to a next level. They do have him tied down to a long-term contract as well. But actually, what I think is most startling about him is, yes, there's this amazing pace, and you've seen it last year at Old Trafford and that amazing goal he scored earlier this season as well in the Champions League. But actually, his medium-range passing, I was looking into this, so passes between 15 and 30 yards. So not the shortest, not the longest either, obviously, the medium ones. Second best pass accuracy amongst outfielders at 97%. So very, very reliable on the ball. and maybe doesn't have that amazing switch of play yet, like a Van Dijk or the very best Premier League centre-backs. But I think he could play for a more successful or more consistently successful club than Spurs. And I think he might want to leave. Another year outside of the top 10, I think Romero and Van de Ven will think about their futures.
So I can't show you this, obviously, but those mid-range passes, it's generally to the left winger, which is interesting to me because as you were talking about those like mid-range passes, I was thinking it probably won't be through the middle because we spoke about in the last podcast. That's not what Spurs really want to do too much, but he is finding his man on that left side. So that little chip pass into the left winger is getting there. Like what's happening after that, I think, is probably a bit of a problem actually when it comes to that left wing position because you've got Kudus on the right and he's settled and sorted. But on the left-hand side, I don't think anyone's truly made it their own as of yet. But yeah, I mean, so he's doing his bit. Do you know what I mean? On the left-hand side, in terms of getting the ball to the people that need it. It's just after that, they seem to have a bit of struggle. That is... He'd go for a lot, though. And who needs him?
Well, there's speculation today that Dayot Upamecano is a top target of Real Madrid and PSG on a free transfer in the summer. Left-sided centre-back as well, although he's right-footed, Upamecano. But I think Van de Ven, I think he could play for a Bayern or a Dortmund or a Juventus or an Inter. Maybe they wouldn't have the cash necessarily, but I think he's got regular Champions League potential. And again, we talked about it in the last podcast as well, but Liverpool will probably need to sign at least 2 centre-backs in the next 2 years. I think Van de Ven would be a pretty solid option.
I guess it'd be interesting to see now Daniel Levy's gone, like, how do they do their business? Like, before they wouldn't sell to... I was thinking, like, you know, you're going to sell them to a Liverpool, like a Premier League team. That's something they've kind of shied away from before. So maybe it is Bayern Munich is the road to go down, if that is something that you do. Spurs fans will be screaming though, because in terms of building something, he has to be there, doesn't he? Because he's been so good for them. Yeah, interesting. I guess it depends on how the season plays out as well, right? It's Thomas Frank kind of finds his feet a little bit more, as does the team, who I think are letting him down a little bit, let's be honest. And I think in the attacking areas, they feel weak at the moment, certainly up front and on the left wing, like it feels a little bit timid. But if he can kind of start to move the pieces together and they start to actually find their feet, then it will all feel a lot rosier.
And there's a lot of speculation that they're going to go for Semenyo in January. Then you've got Kudus, you've got Kulusevski, you've got Maddison, who's been out for the entire year. Solanke's been out for the entire season. Whether you think Solanke raises the bar that much, he was still bought for a huge amount of money.
I think he holds up the ball, though.
Yeah.
I think at the very least, this is the problem. Is that Spurs, like in the first few games, it was kind of work. You give it to Kudus, he's so strong and then can drive inside and switch if he needs to. That works. But people start to figure that out, and you double up on him. And if you double up on him, that means there's space somewhere else. It's probably in the midfield, but they don't seem to want to play to those two midfielders. So I think they can be better. Spurs.
They've got some decent players. Pedro Porro is a decent player as well. Like they confuse me.
Yes. One player I sort of teased in the last podcast, I was thinking could be a great fit for that Tottenham midfield, would be my one to watch for Man United, Kobbie Mainoo.
Nice.
Because what the hell's going on there? Like, he's a really good footballer, and for whatever reason, he's not playing those games, is he, for Man United? And like, look, does it get to a point? We really don't know. It's the same like Spurs, isn't it? You don't know. Are Man United going to like keep falling off a cliff now because they've lost this one game? We're recording this just after the Everton game, or will they continue to find their feet, which they were doing prior to this? Either way, if that manager goes, then Kobbie Mainoo might start to have a life there. But at the moment, he's not important, and he should be important. And I think, speaking about Palhinha being somewhat underrated in the last pod, the point I was making was that from winning the ball, that's what he's brilliant at. So let him be that, and then that other player needs to be someone who's pretty press-proof, happy to get on the ball in different areas, and can pick out a pass, maybe drive with the ball a little bit here and there. I think Kobbie Mainoo could do that, especially with that added energy and defensive nous that you get from Palhinha. That with Casemiro can't cover the ground. Palhinha can cover the ground. So people have a go. People say with Mainoo, he's maybe not got that athleticism. He's got enough athleticism. You know, if you think of, say, like Reed at Fulham, when Fulham were brilliant, those two played really, really well together. Reed's not like an outrageous athletic animal. So yeah, would Man United sell him? Would they sell him to Spurs? Would he go on loan in January? Like, how would he want to play it, Mainoo, and how would Man United want to play it? That fascinates me. But I think the story of Kobbie Mainoo is someone who played in the Euros final and is nowhere near the England squad now. It's one to watch.
It's definitely one to watch. It's really difficult as well. It feels like he's in a race against time against Amorim. And at the moment, as you say, as we record this, it might change by the time this goes out. Amorim's in the lead. Amorim feels like he's got more of a future at Man United than Kobbie Mainoo does right now. Because
he's in control, isn't he?
He's in control of the situation, ultimately. They keep on making public announcements about how long he's going to stay at the club, longer than the length of his contract, which always amuses me anyway. I would be very surprised if Kobbie Mainoo wasn't playing for another club by the end of next summer.
Liverpool.
Again, I think this is a player that could move. Curtis Jones.
I think he'd move.
Curtis Jones. I know he's the scouser in the dressing room, particularly now Trent's gone as well. He's 24 years old and he's never started 20 league games in a season. Pretty nuts.
That is pretty nuts.
Only once over the last 5 seasons has he started more than 14 league games.
Do you believe that he should be starting for a defending champion?
Probably not, because I don't think he's necessarily consistent enough in every facet of his game. But the suggestions that I was going to put forward was, could he go and be a starter every week at Palace or a club like Aston Villa? You know, clubs that are competing for European football every year.
Liverpool fans would scream at that.
Yeah. But I think he's at the moment playing significantly better than Alexis McAllister, and Arne Slot's still not turning to him on a consistent basis. He's only played more than 29 minutes in a Premier League game 3 times this season. So he's barely being used at all. And even when he's had a good game, so he played really well against Frankfurt in a game that Liverpool looked like they were starting to get it together. I think they won 5-1. He then plays against Brentford in the next game they lose. And he always feels like the fall guy. He always feels like the guy that's first out of there.
Yeah.
And I do get it, because they won a Premier League with Gravenberch, McAllister and Szoboszlai. And McAllister is a much, much better player than he's shown so far this season. But it just doesn't feel like at 24 that he's ever going to be a key part of this project. And maybe he just wants to play for his boyhood club, get 200 appearances and pick up some trophies along the way. But I think he could be a star at another upper-middle Premier League club.
It's a really tricky one for him, isn't it? Because he's been involved in England squads, I think, under Tuchel, if I'm not mistaken. So there's an understanding of his talent. Like, I asked that question. I think he is good enough to be that guy. But yeah, you're right. For whatever reason, he seems to be the one that's disposable, and that's not going to suit him forever. That's the difficult thing you have as a player. Is, you know, people go over the years, like you say, like Sean Wright-Phillips goes to Chelsea, or Jack Rodwell goes to, where did he go?
Everton, Man City.
Or Calvin Phillips, they go and people go, he's like, what are you doing? You got to believe in yourself. Dewsbury Hall, like those players, you've got to kind of go and believe in yourself. And I think there's no doubt it's like the opposite for him, because he's already at the big club, but something needs to change there, because he'll have to admit, this isn't right for me. This isn't the right place for me, or you have to have like a crazy amount of confidence to go, I'm going to go here to go here, because I don't know where does he go. That's the question. But you're right, he should be a starter somewhere. He should be so important somewhere.
Unbelievably good at retaining possession, which is such an underrated trait in the Premier League. And yeah, maybe he doesn't.
Does he go Spurs?
Maybe, I mean, a few years ago he was scoring some amazing long-range bangers, etc. And maybe he's not naturally creative enough, and maybe sometimes a little bit too safe in the way he plays. But being able to complete 90% of your passes game in, game out is really, really, it's so handy, especially for a club like a Palace, like an Aston Villa, like maybe even a Newcastle or something, if they lost a Tonali or a Bruno Guimaraes, etc. Because
24 is the last of the young years as a footballer, I think.
Yeah.
So once he steps into 25 in 2026, I presume, like he's like, hang on, you know, I should be the guy somewhere. And maybe that will come to be, but I guess there needs to be that. Does a pathway need to be given to him, or is that just, that would be too kind, wouldn't it? Just because he's a Scouser.
I think even when he's playing at his best, though, he doesn't feel like he's going to be given 10 starts in a row and really kind of solidify yourself. There's also an argument that Liverpool fans will no doubt be making in the comments right now. Liverpool's midfield depth isn't great. Like, they don't want to get rid of Jones.
I don't think that's the question,
no,
though, is it?
Well,
I don't
think
they want to get rid of
him.
Yeah, I think it's from his perspective. Okay. Brentford. Michael Coyote. 11.5 throw-ins taken per 90, first in the Premier League. What he's kind of known for a lot of people is that long throw. But he's so much more than that. Like the way he bombs up and down, he's got these lovely long legs, and he just eats up the ground, affects the game, is positive, and I like him a lot. And I think I was thinking about Sharda a little bit, but I think that he'll get more, what's the word, column inches, as opposed to Coyote, who's kind of just, playing in a different position there. But yeah, he's a really good, interesting player. That his ability to cover the ground, he can beat his man one-on-one. Maybe a ripple effect is with him being able to be defensively really strong, eat up the ground, but that long throw. Do you think that a team would, a sort of top side that just wants every 1% would go, come here, we want you, just to sit on the bench, and if we need you to take a long throw, get you on the pitch? Potentially.
I also think that there's, as you've kind of intonated, he's got a lot to his all-round game as well outside of that long throw. So, and he was a star of, I think it was Italy's under 19s. They won the Euros and he scored in the final. He's played for Italy under 21s as well. He's very highly rated by the Italian Football Federation. I think he's got a lot to his game. I think he has been one of the stories of a Brentford side that I personally picked to finish 20th. That was an embarrassingly bad shout now. I think I underestimated. Thomas Frank left Full Spurs in June, and they had all summer to pick a manager, and they picked their set-piece coach. I think we probably underestimated the fact that they really did kind of rate Keith Andrews very highly. And
the system's bigger than the coach.
Or maybe
that's part of it too. So it's one where he will go with it because he's seen it work. So why would he blow it up? I think that's part of it. But I also think I quite enjoyed Keith Andrews' personality as a manager so far, because everyone was kind of just discounting him. But yeah, again, all the Bs are the same. Brentford, Bournemouth, and Brighton. I think they buy these kind of players for a reason. And yes, he has that superpower of the long throw, but I think he's got so much more to his game. It was a pre-season game against QPR, and I remember thinking, oh my God, they all seem huge, all of them. And I don't know if it was a Premier League thing, but he was one who stood out in terms of his driving with the ball. And his ability to cover the ground, win his duels. Really, really good player. I think people will talk about him more and more as time progresses. Everton.
I went with some hipster shouts. This isn't a hipster shout. Iliman Ndiaye. What a player. And just so fun. I don't know whether there's some players that feel built for numbers, and like Mo Salah, I think is probably the best example of that. There's some players that are built for entertaining and can do the numbers as well. And Iliman Ndiaye is one of the players you want to watch football for. He is just so entertaining, and he's becoming much more clinical and effective in the final third as well. So his shots on target have gone from 43% to 64%, which is 6th best in the Premier League. And one thing that I didn't realise until I was doing the research for this, he works really hard too. He's first for defensive actions amongst Premier League forwards.
Oh, really?
Really impressive.
Wow.
Well, I didn't necessarily, when I watch him play, it's not what catches the eye. It's those amazing ability to dribble off both feet. And the story coming up through Rising Ballers, you see the videos of him as a youngster. What a story. And I think that a lot of clubs will be after him. The Athletic reported that Inter tried to sign him in the summer, which is interesting. Already that calibre of club going for him. Supposedly Juventus, Milan, Atleti, Spurs, Newcastle are also looking around him as well. So I sadly do think he'll move on.
Interesting.
One player that I think probably goes into the one to watch for Everton in a more negative sense so far, and I don't mean to hammer a player that's, I don't think, even 20 yet, but Tyler Dribbling hasn't really got any minutes or got going at Everton yet. Yeah. And maybe that's the long-term vision.
That'll come, won't it? Yeah. It's a good point. I think it's interesting for Everton as well that you could imagine Everton fan kind of wincing, but kind of getting their back up at going, oh, why are we selling him? He's one of our best players. But every team needs to be able to sell players.
Absolutely.
And if you can get some crazy money for, like I did myself, I was like, why would you sell him? But if you can get crazy money for him, it might be one that you kind of need to do to keep it moving forward. So, as to the previous transfer strategy, like not just throwing money and then getting nothing back, you got to start doing that a little bit. So yeah, it's an interesting one to see in terms of being one to watch in 2026. Where will he be? And that part of that is intertwined with the growth of Everton and how they are looking to become as well. I actually went to Baller League a couple of weeks ago. And I chatted to Maz, who was his manager at Rising Ballers, and he was like, we're so not surprised.
Really?
Yeah. He said like,
even to get to that level, wow.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, if you ask any of them, he was just on another planet. And the work rate was the big one.
Really?
He worked so hard. Yeah. Newcastle. Got two here we can chat about if it's okay. One being Visser, who hasn't played a game yet. So for him to go for that kind of money, obviously had some injury problems. And how is that going to look? I wonder, I was listening to a Newcastle podcast, Pod on the Tyne, and they were talking about how Eddie Howe is not under any kind of threat. This is before the Man City win. But there is an understanding that this team needs to evolve somewhat. And that got me thinking with this, with Visser coming in, you've got Voltemade and Visser knocking about. How are you going to play both of those guys? You've also got, you're a bit stacked on that left-hand side. You've got Anthony Gordon. You can play on the right, obviously. Harvey Barnes, who absolutely wants to be on that left-hand side. So how is it going to look? I'm quite intrigued by that. And I wonder if we could see a 4-4-2 or some kind of new iteration. I reckon Eddie Howe I presume he's got something in his mind. So it'd be interesting to see how, or was it just enforced and you were, we need some strikers because Isak's going. I'm intrigued to see how that plays out. But with Voltemade and with Visser, you've got two really good finishers there, but two very different profiles. So fascinated to see that. The other one I wanted to check out there was Lewis Hall, just from the England angle. He's now fit. I think the game against Man City was the first time you saw Livramento and Lewis Hall together. And in terms of the right back and left back for England, both of those, in the last obviously couple of camps have not been the two. But with the World Cup coming, if those two can get a proper run of games, who's going to be the left back for England?
Well, there's an opening there, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's a few positions where it's not quite settled. There's also some that are absolutely nailed on. I think left wing between Anthony Gordon and Marcus Rashford, probably. Left backs between a number of players, probably Livramento on that side as well. Lewis Hall, Lewis Skelly, who
Nico
plays
O'Reilly
alongside Rice, probably between Wharton and Anderson, I would say, right now as well. And then who plays alongside Mark Gehi, whether that's Stones or Konza or someone. I think it will probably be Reece James at right back, and obviously players like Pickford and Kane and Bellingham and Palmer again is another kind of debate. But left back's a definite opening, and I hope Lewis Hall gets back to his best, because I do think he's a really, really complete player when he is at his best. In terms of the other Newcastle question you were kind of raising, I think a 4-4-2 is definitely a possibility. I wonder what it means for Anthony Gordon, who's not playing particularly well this year, at least in the league, to play that far back and have to do that much defensive work, or whether he plays Joe Linton as a left midfielder, almost in that old school 4-4-2 system. But then Joe Linton's not playing very well. So it will be definitely one to think about. Also, a 4-2-3-1 with Voltemade playing as the 10 in front of Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes, I think could potentially work as well.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways you could get.
That's how I kind of saw it.
Yeah,
sorry.
but they've got a kind of, it's not an issue, because I think they'll be absolutely delighted with how Voltemade has started, especially given Wisser's been out, as you say, and under the pressure that he was under and the Karl-Heinz Rummenigge comments, etc. But they were expecting Wisser to work sooner than Voltemade, if that makes sense. He was the one with Premier League experience. He was the one with 19 goals or 20 goals to his name last year. He was the kind of this is for now signing. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see, but I think Newcastle will just be delighted to have some options there.
Yeah, absolutely. Fulham,
I went with Kevin.
Good old Kevin.
I
love this about Brazilian names.
Yeah.
Fred.
So fun. Samuel Chukwueze is another shout as well. Amazing assist at the weekend. Well, amazing is maybe an exaggeration. Painful for me, but it was a good assist at the weekend for Raul Jimenez, who scored that goal against Sunderland, as I was in the away end, almost crying. No, I'm joking. I wasn't that upset, but it was a gutting end to that game. Chukwueze, I think, has a lot more to show, because I think he was brilliant at Villarreal, never got going at Milan. He's not the only sort of player that struggled in forward areas there over the last, 25 years. But Kevin, I think there's real high potential in this player as well. From the first moments of his first game,
so fun.
It was really entertaining, and it reminded me, and he hasn't kicked on in the same way that this player did, but I remember the first time I saw Matoma in the Premier League, and I went, woof, that's fun.
Yeah.
And Kevin kind of has the same effect. And even though it's a very small sample size at the moment, I think he's only played 380 minutes. He's at nearly 5 dribbles per 90. And that's not freakish, because last year in the Champions League, he only played 360 minutes in the Champions League. So there's, 8 games in a Champions League group stage for Shakhtar at least. But despite all those players that went all the way to the final, the semi-final, the quarter-final, he was 6th for dribbles completed in the entire Champions League. So he's got it in his locker to do it at that level. And yeah, he hasn't because of injury and Fulham's form and a few different options there for Marco Silva and the struggles they've had this season. Hasn't got going yet, but I do expect in 2026 him to not necessarily explode, but to really start establishing himself in the Premier League.
Yeah, he's another great example of like, I don't think it feels like when you're watching him, he doesn't know what he's going to do. And so that's got to be really difficult for the opposition. And so again, that player that's unpredictable is one to watch. Obviously, he generally plays out wider and then being in those half spaces. But yeah, great shout. I think he is literally one to watch. Like, you get excited when he's coming on. But I'd imagine Fulham, it might be one where we enjoy him and Fulham fans might get frustrated with him. But we'll see what his level is. Nottingham Forest. I've changed this last minute because I don't think I totally thought it through. So I was going to go with Backward just because I quite like him and I've been interested by him. But I was sort of living in a Ange Postecoglou world and we're in a Sean Dyche world now. And I thought, I can't see a world where he gets lots of minutes. So you could say he's one to watch in the sense of where will he go? Where will he end up? Because I could imagine him kind of moving on, but I like him. So there's something there. I'm going to put forward, in terms of ones to watch, Gibbs White. Because I think there's a conundrum here where I think the way that Nottingham Forest will end up playing, Sean Dyche's got a team that's got a lot more talent than he's had previously. Obviously, off the back of an amazing win against Nottingham Forest. And you've got
Liverpool.
Against Liverpool. Sorry, my bad. And you've got players like Elliot Anderson and Hudson-Odoi and Ndoye on the other side. And Igor Jesus is getting some minutes as well. He could have been a shout. But I think Gibbs White is a really interesting one here because I could imagine his top line numbers of scoring goals kind of really improving because I think he will be afforded in a team that's going to play a bit more long ball and he's not going to be the one that's going to drop deep and get involved that much to be in and around the box. And I think there will be a lot of crosses that come in and he will be there and he's able to sort of sniff out goals, right? But the style of play, which I don't think will be awful, but will be Sean Dyche football, from an England point of view for him, which selfishly that's what I'm kind of looking at this from, although his numbers might be high, I wonder if the style of play might hurt his ability to get into that squad. And with the amount of 10s knocking about, I think there's a funny decision that Tuchel's got to make where, is he taking a backup striker? Who is that backup striker? Is he taking two backup strikers? Is he taking one backup striker and a guy who's kind of like a striker? How many 10s are you taking? Because Gibbs White isn't your normal 10. So I think he's one to watch because I think it might be a confusing one where his goals might go up or his goals and assists might go up, but he still might miss out. Does that make sense?
Definitely makes sense. I can't imagine him going at the moment. Just because I think Thogden will definitely go because
Palmer has to go,
Bellingham has to go, and then we kind of need more security in terms of options at the sort of base of the midfield, if you want to call it that, like Rice, Wharton, Anderson, I imagine going. I think Jordan Henderson will go as well.
Yeah.
Eze as well.
Yeah.
There's just so many options there now as well, and I just don't know whether he's necessarily playing quite well enough, although it was nice seeing him when he missed the last squad talking about Tuchel calling him and how motivated he was by that and how he was just like, yeah, I wasn't offended. I just knew that I had to get my stuff in order, really. And hopefully he does improve as the season goes on because it must have been a complicated summer with so much speculation about him and that sort of quite public, weird sort of contract extension on the pitch, etc. So yeah, good luck to him. But at the moment, I can't see him going to the World Cup. West Ham. Now, West Ham was an interesting one in terms of ones to watch. I don't think the mood at that club is brilliant, although I do think it's picked up in the last few games, of course. And a player that's been quite crucial, I think, to their turnaround is Jean-Claire Todibo. Now, across his first year, he was on loan last year, then got signed for 40 million euros. They had to because it was an obligation to buy. Right. Really not that impressive last year.
No,
Todibo.
I was going to say, he's good, but is he good? I don't know.
So I've been really confused by West Ham centre-backs for a while because I think individually Kilman, Mavropanos and Todibo were a lot better than they were showing.
Okay.
Nuno's quite a good record with centre-back talent. I mean, look at Murillo and Milenkovic last year, how well organised they were and how unified and their blocks. And it was a well-taught defensive side. And previously at Wolves with Kilman and I think Nathan Collins as well crossed over with him. He's clearly got an eye for developing defensive talent. And West Ham have got 7 points from their last 3 games. It's kind of taken them up to near safety. They beat Newcastle, they beat Burnley, and they drew with Bournemouth, the game that we were talking about earlier. And they're now 17th. They're feeling a little bit more hopeful. And Todibo has played pretty well in the last 3 games, both in a back 3 and a back 2. And I thought, kind of compared to a lot of West Ham players who either have a very established sort of reputation or are brand new to the league, Todibo feels like he's got the most kind of establishing him to do, in that he started from quite a low bar. So I think 2026 will be a big year for him personally. And improving at the back and getting some of those centre-backs going is going to be absolutely vital to West Ham re-establishing themselves as a mid-table side.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess with him, you're kind of you're investing in Nuno stocks, aren't you?
I
as
am,
well,
yes.
in terms of his ability to do that. Freddie Potts, I just want to chuck out there as well. I think he's like
played very well.
He's a proper West Ham lad, and I think he's a great fit there and gets about and little Scott Parker vibes. I quite like him. Leeds, the latest in the lineage, Harry Gray. Archie Gray's younger brother. He is apparently really good. I've seen a load of clips of him, but it's one where it's their youth games and you just don't know. But there's a lot of hype around the lad. Yeah, of course. But it feels like it's in slow motion a little bit. Yeah. So you're not, it's hard to kind of truly know. 10 goals in 10 games in the youth ranks this season, and just because of the players that have come before, we're talking about ones to watch. I think So there's a few ways this plays out in 2026. One, okay, this is the version I don't expect, is that he can't, because they're struggling to score goals, somehow 17-year-old Harry Gray comes to save the day in terms of scoring goals for Leeds, who are struggling when it comes to goals. The more likely reality is that he goes on loan somewhere, and so we then find ourselves at the start of next season, and that's where it might be interesting. In the sense of, one, is he in the Championship with Leeds because they've not been able to stay up, and so does he get those minutes, and how does he get on as a 17-year-old if he is just that good? Like, it's one where if he goes on loan to a Championship team and struggles, I could understand that as well because it takes a minute, right? Look at someone like Liam Delap. Like, it took him a load of loans, but it didn't really work out for him to kind of find his body, I guess, as much as anything else. But I saw it there, and I thought it would be an interesting one to kind of put forward. I kind of want to talk about the striker situation at Leeds, though, because obviously he apparently has got that kind of Harry Kane vibe to him, Harry Gray. In terms of the players that they're being linked with Leeds, because the clear problem for them is goals. Mm-hmm. Dominic Calvert-Lewin he's just sort of out of sorts, isn't he? Has been for a long time. Okafor, it's not really happened yet. Nemecha, moments, but you don't totally trust him. And I mean, intrigued by the people that have been put forward. Like in the summer, I kind of laughed at this because it was out after the Club World Cup, but Gonzalo, Real Madrid guy, I've gone blank. Is it Garcia? Yeah, it's Garcia. I had Higuain in my head because he kind of plays a bit like him. Is one. And Troy Parrott is the other one that they're being linked with quite a lot. Two kind of out and out strikers. I just thought I'd get your take on that, because that will be the difference for me, because I don't think 2/3 of the pitch, I think Leeds have got a lot going for them. But in terms of having a guy that will get the goals, does it feel like to you that for them to stay up, they need a player like that's going to hit the ground running?
Definitely. I totally agree that would be the area they look at. If I was Troy Parrott and I've got a World Cup to come and I'm doing very well at AZ Alkmaar or a World Cup playoff to come, I don't know whether I'd move mid-season to a Premier League club that are struggling as much as Leeds for goals. It feels like if you don't kind of get going in the first 2 months, you're kind of in March, April time, and it's getting quite close to the end of the season. I think strikers moving in January to a struggling club, big ask. Gonzalo Garcia, again, I think he'll probably get a fair amount of minutes this season at Real Madrid. It feels like Endrick's going to leave in January.
That feels like a dream for Leeds.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, he was linked with Sunderland in the summer as well, so clearly some agent is trying to do something. But it feels like Gonzalo Garcia's, almost not moved ahead, but Vinicius Junior's struggling at Real Madrid. He's fallen out with Xabi Alonso. There's reports that all the players are unhappy with Xabi Alonso's sort of management style, and I think they're probably just not happy with being told to work off the ball, which is probably a problem with their own mentality, to be totally honest. I would stay at Real Madrid if I was Gonzalo Garcia, especially a mid-season move. So I wonder whether you're going down to a sort of, not this player because he's playing okay at Como, but sort of like an Alvaro Morata type.
Yeah.
Do they want to go to the Premier League for one final shot? Maybe, or like a Tammy Abraham. Where is Tammy Abraham? What's he doing? I think he's at Besiktas. Yeah, that feels like the kind of move.
Just chuck one out if your Leeds fans are going to get annoyed with me. Tanaka. I think Tanaka needs to be utilised a little bit more than he is, and I think he's a different kind of midfield profile. And if they can find a way to have, the size, but also someone like Tanaka who's just like neat and can create and connect, you'd hope that he's one to watch and he can catch fire a little bit. Just chuck another name out there for you. Burnley.
Burnley was a little bit difficult for players for 2026. I kind of looked ahead to. I'm sorry, Burnley fans, if you do get relegated, who kind of is on the move. And Florentino Luis is a player that I'm really astounded that he is at Burnley.
Me too, because I was thinking about him for underrated, but then I thought he's gone for big money, and I'm amazed he's there. Yeah. So how can he be underrated?
Yeah, whereas a move on from Burnley feels a bit more of a natural fit for this specific podcast. There was moments at Benfica where he looked like one of Europe's best young emerging defensive midfielders. He was putting up like over, I think it was close to 8 defensive actions per game, sort of N'Golo Kante levels. Exactly. Yeah. And quite a different profile from a lot of midfielders that tend to emerge from Portuguese academies, etc. Now he's at Burnley, and actually his long-range passing, I was looking at this, 85% completion on his long-range passing, which is really pretty impressive. The only other player that can top that who's completed more than 5 long-range passes is Ugochukwu. So both of them delivering the goods for Scott Parker in terms of getting the ball into those strikers, into those forwards. And he also ranks 11th in Europe and 3rd in the Premier League for tackles completed. So he's doing his job. I don't think there's necessarily enough quality around him. I think a lower mid-table Premier League club will probably look at Florentino Luis and think that's a player that we could definitely do with next year. Okay.
And Wolves, spoke about Krejci in the previous podcast. He's someone that I think, again, could go into... feels like Wolves are probably going to go down. So I think he's one to watch in the sense of a player who's been playing in centre-back positions or, back in a back three, but looks and feels like sort of a holding DM, like hasn't got that outrageous size of a centre-back and looks really good with his left foot there, positive in his play as well. So I could see him becoming a Premier League player where that we'll see. But I guess if he was in the Championship with them as well, I think he'd be fantastic for them. Because he's Czech, I was thinking Everton, David Moyes. He'd be great little fit there if that comes to be. Again, I asked Dave Azzopardi about who we should go for in terms of one to watch. He said it feels a bit obvious, but it is probably the name to chuck out there. And he's been linked with Man United, I think. João Gomez. He is, he's been their kind of main guy in the midfield for over the last couple of years. And obviously the team itself is struggling, but Dave still believes that he is a quality player that will kind of get that move. That's the horrible thing, isn't it? When you get to this point, you're talking about these players who are inevitably probably going to be the guys that you can get the money for. So he's the obvious name in terms of one to watch because of where he might go. And I'd be intrigued to see who's circling around for him.
Yeah, I remember in the summer on my own YouTube channel, I suggested him as a signing for Inter Milan, and they eventually signed Diouf to be kind of 4th choice central midfielder, but they play a system where they've got 3 central midfielders. He's not that Calhanoglu long-range passer. He's not as dynamic as someone like Barella, but he can kind of do a little bit of everything in midfield as well. He's been linked with Liverpool in the past as well. I'm not sure whether they'd go back in for him. He does feel like quite a pretty decent fit for a Man United midfield as well. The player that we were looking at a lot in the summer was Javi Guerra from Valencia, but he's actually had a really difficult start to the season. He's still a young player. So, yeah, they probably do feel like they're going to sign at least one a central midfielder.
I think there's a bit of an opportunity there because I remember, again, I was watching Dave's channel and he was talking about when they were on the good run. And this is the thing, is obviously the spin is always based on how your team's doing. And he was talking about him and Andre as a midfield 2 in the Premier League. That was, when things were going well, it's like, that is a really, really good midfield 2. So obviously because the results are bad right now, does that mean he's a bad player in a better team? Like, no. Like, I think it would be very, very different. So probably one to watch in terms of, a player that will move on sooner rather than later. And that's what Wolves do anyway, isn't it?
What they do.
Right. Doogie, thank you so much, mate.
Been a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Doogie has a YouTube channel. Please go and follow and support Doogie. We love Doogie. If you enjoy this podcast, do me a favour. Follow the podcast, share it, get it out to the world as we look to continue to grow and believe in ourselves. Have a great week. We'll speak soon.